What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Traffic and Funnels Show. I'm here with Mr. Dan Martell. Dan is a successful entrepreneur, investor, mentor, and coach to huge SaaS companies like Intercom, Hootsuite, Udemy. He's a husband, he's a dad, and not only that, this might be the icing on the cake. He is a Canadian.
Ooh-wee. I get some points for that one?
Proud Canadian. Dude, I love Canadians.
Okay, cool.
You guys are great. You have great humor. You've exported a lot of great comedians. I've got a lot of Canadian friends.
We apologize for Justin Bieber, though.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, that probably
Can't win
takes it
them all.
down quite a bit.
Yeah.
But no, man, it's great to have you. Thanks for your time today. Can you just kind of give the folks who are listening to the show just a little bit about you, your passion, who you are? Just kind of 2 minutes, your story.
The quick version, software is my passion. So B2B SaaS, software as a service, if you hear me say SaaS. Reoccurring revenue is my jam.
Ooh.
The story around that is I grew up in a really challenging environment, diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11, taken out of my house, put into crisis centers, foster homes, group homes, 12, 13, 14. Ended up in jail twice by the time I was 17. And at 17, I found myself in a high-speed chase, high and drunk, trying to get away from the police, and smashed into a house thinking, I was going to pull a movie scene, hide out in a garage. And when I crashed, I pulled, there was a handgun in a bag sitting next to me, and I was going to let the police take my life. And for some reason, the gun got stuck. And I woke up sober the next day in a jail cell, wondering what my life was going to look like. So ended up doing 6 months in an adult facility for the severity of my crimes. Probably not what you thought a Canadian was going to share right off the bat, but
No, I didn't know that was possible for Canadians.
Oh yeah. There are some some devil children out there. But I ended up in a therapeutic community called Portage. It was a rehab center for adolescents, and I did 11 months there, rebuilding, my emotional, feeling management, self-esteem, confidence, rebuilt the relationship with my family. It was at the end of that program, I was helping Rick, the maintenance guy, clean out this cabin. It was an old church camp, and there was a 486 computer with a yellow book on Java programming sitting next to it. And I opened it up. It read like English, which I thought if it was a programming book, it'd be like, hieroglyphics and hexadecimal numbers. And I followed chapter 1. I got the computer to say hello world. I literally thought, and I mean, this is unfortunately didn't happen this way, but I thought I was like some secret, computer programming genius. And what's funny is that belief ended up being the reason that I just honestly became my new addiction. Software development, writing code. There was something beautiful about it. And then entrepreneurship, literally, I've always been entrepreneurial, just nothing legal. When I got out, I decided to start building software companies. And there's something I think about the reoccurring revenue model that's always been, it spoke to my soul in regards to the consistency and normalcy and just you can count on it. And I just felt like growing up, I didn't have a lot I could count on. And here I knew that if I built something that added value and I had to rebuild that trust every month, it just felt right. And it's what I've been doing now for 20 some years.
That's awesome, man. What a story. I definitely wasn't expecting that. I'm interested, now that I know this story, how much of your drive is tied to your history as a kid and teenager and all that. What would you say, how much of your drive is tied to that? And then how have you had to evolve as a leader and entrepreneur to let go of the unhealthy stuff?
Yeah.
Right?
And Chris, that's such an incredible question. I'd say today, 80% of my drive comes from, for some reason, making it through that period of my life. I mean, growing up, I didn't think I'd make it past 21, and nobody else did either. Like literally to this day, people that don't know my current story of, exiting the last 3 companies, becoming a millionaire at 27, investing in 40 plus software companies and, and continuing to build my empire. Like they just thought Dan's dead. And I'd meet them at the mall and they're like, holy moly, and today I live this truly like lucky life. And I have an amazing relationship with my family and my brothers and my sisters. So I'd say, it just evolved. Right. So like when I got out, I had this really unhealthy addiction to working. Like I literally would write code for 100 hours a week and it was
Yeah.
normal. I didn't want to talk to people. Right now, I'd consider myself an extreme extrovert. But back then I was more
Mm.
of the thing that spoke to me as software is just build it and people use it and I don't have to talk to anybody. And turns out if you want to build a business though, takes people. What a crazy
Yeah.
idea. So,
Yeah.
I've hired and managed over 500 people now in my career. So big shifts in that front. So just a lot of stuff, but the unhealthy stuff, I think it's, for me, entrepreneurship became the ultimate personal development program. So I've been on that train inadvertently in rehab. Portage literally built personal development into their curriculum. Didn't know it at the time. Definitely look back and feel so blessed. And then, just continuously always try and ask myself, who do I need to become to get to that next level? Because I really think that's the question we have to ask. We look in the mirror. If our business or our lives aren't where they're at, we just got to go look in the mirror and
Mm.
ask ourselves, what change do I need to make around my thinking, my actions, my habits, my routines to unlock that? So, I mean, I can systematically go through all those negative beliefs, scripts, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call them. But there's been, thousands since that moment. But I just feel like I had people looking out for me that believed in me more than I believed in myself.
Incredible. With that drive that you have, and you said in the past working 100 hours a week, I'm curious as a husband and as a father, how you find, but a lot of people, they try to find, balance. How do you equalize and how do you make sure that you don't leave your wife or you have two boys, right?
Yeah. Two
You know,
young kids. I mean, so full transparency. I'm an open book, as you can probably tell. I was engaged prior when I was 26 to 28, which was crazy because right around the time I literally came home and my fiance at the time was a mess. Took her ring
mm,
off, dropped it on the kitchen table, and walked out. And 2 months later, I sold my company for millions of dollars and didn't have like literally. It was so weird. It was like th- this my identity was in this business, and then my
mhm.
fiance leaves. We were getting married in like 6 weeks, and like I mean, just talk about a
Wow.
clusterfuck. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So that was another point in my life where I had to go down a different journey because what frustrated me for so long was why was I so good at business and so bad at relationships? I'm like, I'm not an
Mm,
idiot. Like you can't,
right.
I couldn't say I'm stupid because I'm like really good at this business thing, but yet for some reason I couldn't figure out how to translate it into, having a partner. Right.
Right.
And honestly, maybe right or wrong today, I realize there's a balance around this, but the way I live an integrated life today, and this is what I even did a whole YouTube micro doc on it, is I leverage all the business processes that I learn and just ask myself what would the equivalent be for my relationship and the way
Mm,
so there's a few things. One, I have fundamentals that I try not to break. So commitment to others, my success habits, and my business metrics. Like if those things are good, that's a really great filter for me to say yes or no to a new opportunity. I think most people don't have that.
right.
So they say yes to everything and they get themselves in trouble. So there's that. But on the personal level, again, this is going to be familiar for anybody that's read Traction or Scaling Up or any kind of business growth book. I mean, we do weekly meetings, my wife and I, every Friday at 11:30. Haven't missed, like that's what we do. We go through everything, but for our family, we we plan the weekend. We talk about the quarter. We talk about our goals. We give ourselves a score. How have I been for you as a husband out of 10? She asked me the same question as a wife. We have that moment every week to kind of reset the heartbeat.
Yeah.
And then we do quarterly reset retreats where we disconnect for 3 nights. So we got one coming up.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's essentially it's quarterly planning for our lives, right? Because
Yeah.
if you don't do that, for me, I mean, like, there's no point in being rich if you're not gonna like have a higher quality of life. Like
Right.
I always laugh at the guy that's incredibly wealthy and then he doesn't want to take his shirt off at the pool because he's out of
Right.
shape. It's like you want to take advantage of those resources because that's really all they are. And then we do a bunch of stuff like that in regards to how we raise our kids. So we have core values as a family. I created this thing called, the Martell mindset. What does it mean to be a Martell? If you ask my boys, they'll
Mm,
rattle off the 7 things, right?
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, and they've known this since they were 3 and 4. Like it's that's not what Martells do. And I got that from like just like watching because like my whole thing was question everything, right? Question religion, question But like,
Yeah.
why do we have these things? Why is there like a rite of passage as a 13-year-old in most cultures,
Right.
where they go into either a mountain climb or a scenario for hunting or whatever it is. And it's like, what would my equivalent be if I get to create it from scratch? And the cool part is we get
Yeah.
to, and that's been the biggest thing. That's why I call it an integrated life. Nope, nobody will work harder than me. But I also balance myself every week. I build vacations into my day. I mean, I'm pretty disciplined. Like, get up at 5 a.m. even on weekends. Like, I just figure out what worked for me.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing, man, because, that's something it was honestly kind of a fear of mine coming from a family who is not entrepreneurial, but my dad was in the military. And so we had a fairly healthy home growing up. But coming up into entrepreneurship and seeing so many entrepreneurs who they've had very successful businesses, but disastrous relationships, marriages, families, divorce over and over. So that's beautiful. And I hope that people that are listening to this really, of course, we'll dive into some stuff about SaaS and scaling businesses. But I think without the family stuff being healthy and right, are you really successful? Right? So many people are, man, how do I grow a business? How do I scale? Kind of this sexy stuff. But I think really to be holistically healthy is to truly be healthy and successful. So thank you so much for sharing that, man. It's awesome.
100%, Chris.
So with that being said, I'm really fascinated by SaaS and the SaaS industry. And I've studied different companies. Of course, we're not in SaaS, we're in consulting, coaching. So there are challenges with that in regards to scale. I've heard you use the word velocity, words that are really interesting and intriguing to me. And so to see the comparisons of SaaS and what we can draw from on the coaching, consulting, direct response side, I'm just interested because you used a phrase, you sent me a video, and you call it growth stacking, right? Essentially, how to grow a business quickly, and in your case, a SaaS business. So, one, can you lay out what is growth stacking, and then maybe how people who aren't in SaaS can utilize that strategy to grow their business?
Yeah. So, my podcast is called Escape Velocity, which I think is where you probably saw that. But to me, it's all about repeatable, scalable systems. And escape velocity is essentially the speed of travel that's required to break free of Earth's gravity. And that literally happens to the Slacks, the Dropbox,
Yeah.
the Teslas. Like, there's a point where the effort, that incremental push, gets you an astronomical bigger output.
Yeah.
And it's hard for entrepreneurs to understand that in business because it just feels like such a slog, right? But Jim Collins wrote about it in Good to Great about the flywheel.
Yep.
But yeah, so growth stacking for me, I'll give you the quick history first. It is a guy
Okay.
named Andy Johns. Andy Johns is, nobody's ever heard of him, and that's what I love about him. But he's also the growth guy behind Facebook, Twitter, Quora, and then more recently Wealthfront. Like, literally, when people say growth hacker, the guy like Andrew Chen, who coined the term growth hacker, and Sean Ellis, who technically created the thing, both those guys were formal advisors to me in my last two companies. They point to Andy as this guy. He's
Got it.
but nobody knows who he is. And Andy Johns and I were speaking at the Growth Hackers conference one time, and we get to spend time in the green room. And I just said, Andy, what's the fundamental principle behind what you do? And he's a big finance guy. And he says, the way I think about it is kind of like, and I think it was Einstein that said one of the most powerful forces in the universe is compound interest, right? It might be, I don't know if it's Einstein or somebody like that, but his whole thing was it's really about building compound interest in your growth channels over time. So, and that's where the escape velocity comes. If you think about it, we're stacking different strategies to the point where each strategy, as if I deploy a remarketing strategy, it's going to improve my direct ads. And if I do some content marketing, it's going to improve, some other strategy. So they all incrementally support each other. And that's how we create hockey sticks, right? They don't magically just like, people talk about, silver bullets, and it's just not true, right? They're fun to romanticize, right? We love to talk about Airbnb's distribution hack, publishing to Craigslist, which is true, but they also did things that were unconventional, like taking photos, high quality photos that they owned of the places when they listed. And I know Joe and Brian, my cohort of SaaS founders back in the day, Travis Kalanick from Uber was an investor in my company. Flowtown is a good friend of mine. Joe and Brian at Airbnb, Drew from Dropbox, Aaron from Box.net, like literally the guys
Mhm.
that I would hang out in San Francisco with. That's
Yeah.
my Heaton from Kissmetrics and many others. So that's my pedigree. Those are the guys that I turn to. And like for me, it's three different things if we wanted to focus on what do we need to focus on to create kind of that flywheel, it's positioning, right? So it's really understanding how to position your product, which I think a lot of direct marketers understand the fundamentals of like an ICP. But in SaaS, it's really about unmet needs. So can we build a compelling, and this is where they talk about product market fit.
Yeah.
Can we build a compelling product that meets the market, that is so compelling that the market pulls it into itself? They're
Mm.
quick to buy and they spend the most. And the reason why those two things are important is short sales cycles for high sales velocity and like ability to return CAC, which is your cost to acquire a customer,
Yeah.
in a short enough period to fund growth. And that is people are like, why does this company need to raise $100 million? It's literally to just pay for growth.
Right.
Most of the time the product doesn't really need to evolve at that point. It's just the incremental cost. But the reason why SaaS companies have such great valuations is because they are these long-term annuities. If they're built properly, they will produce cash, in perpetuity. Like they'll just keep going.
Yeah.
So positioning is one. Two is product, right? Which I talked a little bit. One is getting to core value. I think a lot of info coaches can really understand this. I think of it as like the first time user experience. You might have experienced this in gaming. Gaming has level one. Level one is really a training level. It's to teach you how to use the game and do the moves. Product should do the same thing, and coaching should do the same thing. You should really think about that first. In coaching, I call it the first 100 days. I got that from my buddy Joey Coleman. He wrote a great book called Never Lose a Customer. But core value, getting all products or all customers to experience the core value. And we can dive into that because that's my favorite kind of stuff. Shareable moments. If you don't think about how the product inherently gets other people exposed to it, then you don't understand kind of viral coefficiencies and really what's called viral word of mouth marketing, VWAM. And then the third big piece is promotion, which to me is OPN. I know you said real estate, or we talked about it quickly. Other people's money. We call it other people's networks, and those are examples of the YouTubes on MySpace, social. Their embed to the Airbnb example on Craigslist to Facebook, literally buying address books from other companies and then tagging you in the literally they would buy. Anybody that did an address book importer for like a networking type tool, they would buy them and send an email to the list saying you've been tagged in a photo on Facebook. Wasn't true, but I'll tell you, people will click through, register, sign up, go through the onboarding experience to even see the potential of, so that's on the promotion side. And that's where like the growth map, and I can deconstruct that for people, is really how we create that flywheel to get escape velocity. There's a lot in there, but that's 20 years of SaaS trying to compress in 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's a big task. So you said that the core values piece was really important and something that you
100%.
love to talk about. So talk to me more about that.
So I learned this. My office for Flowtown, one of the companies I started and exited, was in Twitter's building in the early days, 2009. And there was a guy there named Josh Ellman. Josh has now become a VC, incredibly successful. Twitter in the early days, a lot of people don't remember that. There was a fail whale. It literally, the infrastructure was not smart. People didn't really understand. Like if you got Twitter, somebody sat you down and explained you Twitter, right? Like no product today would be able to withstand that kind of like complexity and understanding. And what Josh did was his specialty was really getting the first time user experience, the FATUI, right? Or the onboarding, whatever you want to call it, figured out to position the product. Because how you unfold a product to somebody, how the sign up flow experience happens tells a story, right? Every product has a product story based on the sequence of steps that you ask people to go through when they sign up. And if you do that right, then the last step should be somebody experiencing core value of the product. From there, you now have permission to show them a bunch of other features and complexity. But if you don't get them there, so for example, what's a product that you guys use SaaS-wise in your business?
We'll use HubSpot.
Perfect. If HubSpot doesn't get you, let's say on the marketing, if it doesn't get you to get a lead from a capture form, they don't get you on the core value. So everything, and that's why and I know Dharmesh, he was an incredible mentor to me. the CTO of HubSpot, and Brian Coffey. So I run a very high-end group for B2B SaaS founders, and we just went to HubSpot in January in Boston and sat down, talked product strategy. And for them, they were sharing about why they make people spend $2,000 typically for coaching, because they need people to go through that configuration and data migration step. You know,
Oh, dude,
HubSpot
they
is
were
a very,
hardcore about that.
yeah, it's a non-negotiable. Like they're like, we've tested it both
Yeah.
ways. It's a non-negotiable because they know and what's great about software, it's so data-driven. You just can split test
Right.
what works and what doesn't, and then you can just make business decisions around it. But that's the idea of core value. It's what is the thing that somebody needs to experience that's going to make them go, aha, right? Because if they don't go, aha, then they don't get it. And if it looks like everything everybody else has, that doesn't work either. So that's where a lot of these MarTech companies, I mean, email marketing, probably one of the most competitive, there's probably 400 different email service providers out there, sliced up in different niches, verticals, feature sets, price points, blah, blah, blah. But at the core, you have to get the new user to experience some value and it literally has to be in that first time they use the product. So if you think about it from a coaching perspective, and I run a coaching business, and I'm happy, Chris, to unpack the what I did in SaaS applied to coaching, because I definitely translated that. We call them quick wins. Like we know, like there's a handful of things that if, depending on the vertical you serve and the price point you're at, et cetera, and your go to market, that if you do these quick wins, you're going to get results. That's our equivalent of core value. And pretty much you're not allowed to move forward until we get you that, because nothing else will matter.
Right.
Literally, it's part of the onboarding steps. It's a data point. It's measured. And we have a % complete for all new customers. Did they get that win? Right. Because if not, I need to figure out what's missing, because it's a non-negotiable.
That's awesome. So would you say that's a mechanism for believability in what the outcome should be?
It's so sometimes it's believability. Ideally, it's an actual result. When I built my company Clarity, which was an online, kind of like if LinkedIn had a call button, that was the premise. A lot of people, when they signed up, they weren't ready to do a call because it cost money. They didn't really have a problem, right? They were just curious. So the way we overcame that is we let them listen to a call with Mark Cuban and somebody reaching out for his advice, right? Because Mark was on the network. So that's a way to, sometimes if you have a product that's highly like an e-commerce, shopping cart, it's hard to simulate that core value, like a transaction. So you can do some really neat things in these blank slate moments to kind of simulate it. And I think that's what internet marketers or info marketers, et cetera, do really great jobs at, is their marketing helps just take away all the objections so that the people will buy. However, once they buy, getting the wins is going to be, there should be a very clear, and again, Joey Coleman has this process that he lays out 7 different phases. There needs to be a process right to the end. And this is again from software, is we call them purple customers. They're referable, right? Like in SaaS, if you don't create a database of referenceable customers, then you're not able to sell, because every new opportunity is going to ask, okay, I need to talk to 2 or 3 references, and you need to build that. And that's a different level of I'm satisfied, right? You can have red, yellow, green, right? Which people stop. Purple is no, they're locked and loaded. You can send them clients and they will say good things because we got them to that point.
I love that. Yeah, man, I'm getting so many ideas on what we can do with the stuff that we're doing with all of our companies. But so it's a mechanism, for believability, but ultimately for achievement, right?
It has to be, I mean, a lot of this stuff, if you distilled it into its essence, I would say it's probably gaming inspired. Like nobody's ever said that to me, but when I look at, how games are developed, narrative storylines, XP, right? Experience points. A lot of people I think gamified experiences was supposed to be this holy grail of activation and product, but it never really materialized. But, Nir Eyal wrote a great book called Hooked, which talks about how some companies use psychology and color and product experiences to create this dopamine hit that we're all familiar with. If you've ever, gotten lost for 3 hours and had browser blindness on Facebook, then you know what I'm talking about, because literally they have PhD level experts trying to figure out, should I make this button this shade of blue or a different shade or copy? And they'll
Yeah.
split test this. I mean, I read the engineering blogs for Facebook and I see they call it Gateway. It's a whole framework around how they deploy tests to, like, 10 million people. And only those 10 million people see it, and they split tests to kind of figure out, did this get more engagement? And they're going low level psychological stuff. So, I mean, I say gaming is probably where a lot of people, if they could be inspired to how they run their businesses, could kind of see how the game. I mean, even just the fact that level 1 completion, there's this above normal celebration, right? Like, you just finished a level, but it's like you saved the world.
Yeah.
That's design. I mean, same thing with like some of the, when I install new versions of product and I see them do, like, I write congrats on Facebook, and it makes this whole. So it makes me want to do congrats more, right? Well, why? Well, they
Feels
know
good.
that if more people say congrats, the more dopamine hits on the other end, the more engagement they have for the product, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, yeah, it's fascinating.
I'm curious if you've used this not only on the customer client side, but have you utilized this strategy for your team, your employees, in any way?
So to me, I look at business as 2 funnels, right? We have the customer funnel and we have the employee funnel. And everything you do for a customer in regards to, marketing and sourcing and qualifying and onboarding and, retention and referrals and all that stuff, the employee stacks the exact same way. And I learned this building this company called Spheric Technologies that was an enterprise portal company selling to Fortune 500 companies that, really my job as a CEO was making sure there was enough pipeline in sales and people pipeline. And if those two things kind of, I knew what my lead time was for building out the team based on project size and kind of deployment. So to me, everything that you do for your customer 100% correlates and translates into the team side.
It's good. So since you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi of scaling, what would you say are some of the biggest learning lessons you've had in scaling businesses?
I mean, there's so many different facets I'd want to unpack there. If I had to distill one that I feel like really resonates with people, it's the idea of buying back your time. Okay. And it's a core metric. I have five core metrics I monitor for my high-end clients, right? I've got my SaaS Academy program, and then I have my 10 million plus ARR companies like ClickFunnels, I coach, and Carrot.com and Proposify. And one of the core metrics is how much time did you buy back? And here's why, especially as the founder, most people hire to add capacity. It's a very normal thing. You're like, okay, I'm really busy. I need to hire somebody to help with, like, if I'm e-commerce, shipping out stuff. And I get it. And what happens is at some point, and usually around 12 people, about $1 million in revenue, and it's plus or minus, 20% depending on your industry. You realize you have 12 direct reports. You realize that you spend most of your day managing the other people. So I call this transactional leadership versus transformational leadership. You tell them what to do, you check that it got done, you tell them what to do next. That's transactional leadership.
Right.
And if you hire people for capacity, you essentially have 12 people to do that with. If you instead buy back your time, what you're doing is essentially you're looking at your own calendar and you're saying, okay, I'm spending 30% of my time in this task. And I need to hire somebody to do that task. It doesn't hire capacity on the thing that I feel like I need to do, but indirectly it does. So Chris, some people don't understand the nuance, but you've been in business long enough that you can probably see the difference is
100%.
when you buy back your time as the founder, then you're able to grow because you've created space. So most entrepreneurs will actually never grow into pain because growing means more work. So they'll actually self-sabotage themselves. They don't even realize they're doing this because growth means hurt and pain and frustration and challenges. Whereas if you flip it and say, I'm only investing $1 of labor to buy back some time in my calendar, then really quickly, usually around 7 people, you feel almost like guilty for the amount of time you have. But the best thing is most entrepreneurs I know will very quickly figure out how to leverage that time to do things that only they're uniquely qualified to do. Partnerships, product strategy, speaking, that kind of stuff that adds just so much, exponential value to the business. And then you pair that with transformational leadership, which is setting a clear outcome, like really clear. Like, I don't think people understand when I talk outcomes. Like the other day I was talking to my finance leader and I said, dude, I want our receivable process to be so good that somebody offers to write a book about it.
Mm,
That's like, do you get that, Adam?
yes.
He's like, I got it. And I was like, do you really get it? Because I'm talking about, like, it's so amazing and so creative and just beautiful in its elegance and simplicity
Yes.
that somebody says, that's a book, man. What you created there, it's just so simple. You know, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I don't care, honestly. I worry about the where. I don't worry about the how.
Yeah.
Okay. And from that, that's outcome. Then we talk about measure. Here's the data points, average days outstanding. We're going to measure.
Right.
So, we're progressing. And then the third is I'm going to coach them to success. Right. And I feel like, I've had business coaches in my career. My first coach, 23, didn't even have the business yet, hired an E-Myth coach, read the book E-Myth, Sarah's Pies, Michael Gerber. It was the audio book. So it has Gerber's voice in my ear. And I was like, that's the way to do it. I've been doing this wrong. I had 2 failed companies right out of the gate. And I hired this guy, Bob, it was like $1,500 a month or something. No money, no business. And I just figured, you know what? I'd rather spend the money to teach myself stuff, even if I didn't have a business.
Heck yeah.
And that ended up being the best decision I ever made. And it was, really around the coaching to success that I realized that my job as a leader, and it takes a lot of self-discipline, as you know, like we all go through this like evolution as an entrepreneur. And trust me, I was the transactional leader. Like, just do this, shut the fuck up, get it done, tell me when it's done. I got more shit to give you. But then you realize that you end up working so hard that if you're literally hiring incredibly smart people, you're not getting their best. My biggest fear always was having somebody leave and go start a business that was better than mine. And they would have given me all that knowledge, but I never asked for it. And I didn't create isn't that crazy, Chris? That
100%,
my fear
dude.
is that somebody actually has an incredible idea, but I didn't create the space for them to feel confident or comfortable enough to share it with me. Or even prompt it. So now it's part of our one-on-one kind of agenda, so that it's not even just me, it's my whole management team. But those, I think that's probably the most relevant to your audience, because coaches definitely have a hard time with this. They make the mistake of hiring students. Those students really just want to be close to the guru, and those people don't want to do the work and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, if you can just look at your calendar and do a time study over the last 2 weeks and just slowly pick away at it, literally your business can look dramatically different in 16 months. And the big thing, and one big idea for me that I always talk about my clients with, is multi-generational wealth. And this is how we create an asset that is valuable. Yeah. So most people think, and I used to think, that if I build this thing, coaching business, it's me. I'm the coach, right?
Right.
So it's never going to be valuable to somebody else. And it's just so not true. I can show you other companies that have built IP and certifications and coaching process. And really it's just, can you build a repeatable, a scalable process that generates results and that doesn't require you? Well, the only way that it doesn't require you is if you spend $1 of labor to buy back something out of your calendar. Now, at some point that that labor is expensive, right? Yeah. To hire management team is going to be, 6 figures plus and comps, but it's cheap because the real value. And if you haven't listened, have you ever listened to Naval? It's a podcast, just Naval. Okay, I'm giving everybody I love Seth Godin. I love all the greats. I've read over 1,000 business books. Naval was one of my mentors. He's the founder of AngelList. Before that, he's just a baller in the Valley. And he, for some reason, got on this rant where Nivi, his business partner, just started asking him questions on a podcast about life and wealth. How do you create wealth? And Naval spent 3 hours talking about it. And it's the best business wealth creation content out there. It should be a book. And it's very underground. So go listen to it. But one of the things that Naval taught me was that real wealth comes from equity ownership in businesses. And and this is kind of what Rich Dad Poor Dad, he tried to talk about, like Kiyosaki from business owner to investor. But to me, it's a lot clearer when it's equity. That's why angel investor, I buy companies now. Is equity is the real value of wealth. Real estate is actually the same thing. It's just the asset is the building, right?
Right.
So that's where people are like, what about real estate? No. You own a building. That's equity, right? The machine, the business is the building. business is the same thing. And the only way to build the business that doesn't require you involved is literally just you got to buy back your time, not buy for capacity.
Dude, what you just unpacked is stuff I'm really passionate about because I've gone through the pain of being a terrible leader,
We all have.
working
That's how we get
working
great.
100 hours a week,
Yeah.
and I think the challenge that people have is because they do work 60, 70, 80, 100 hours a week, they feel like it's not even possible, right? And that's what you were just referring to. I think one of the greatest skills that you can develop is the skill of being a great leader. And being a great leader to me is being able to identify the right people who are the right culture fit, right attitude, that you can set them up for success and get out of their way and remove any barriers from their way. And that's the thing that's been probably the most transformational. Now we have tremendous cap space, right, in all of our companies, and we have multiple companies. And what you're talking about is going after equity now, right? Because we have cap space, we understand how to leverage, capacity and growth and scale through leadership and having the right people and letting them do what they're amazing at,
Build the
and
people, the people build the business.
100%, dude.
That's
That's
like,
like,
but that's like it's like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of entrepreneurship. Like you really need to build. Most people just never allow themselves to build that kind of business, right? When you get into the 20, 50, 100, 200 employees, there, you don't even get there unless you figure that out. And it's usually
yeah,
like at the max, it's 30. You can literally brute force it to 30 people.
yeah,
But what happens is you get so much turnover that you're just capped. You literally are
been
dealing
there.
with fires every day and you don't even know this is happening.
Yep.
If you want to crack that 30 person mark, and ideally you'll feel the pain at 12, there's no other way. Full stop, period. You can't prove me
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're on the same page, my brother.
It's cool. No, I see what you guys built, man. It's impressive.
Thank you. I'll leave it off with one last question for you. And if you have any other words you want to give, other words of wisdom, I'm curious what you would say if you could recommend one lesson that non-SaaS companies can take from SaaS companies on how to scale, how to build quickly, how to be profitable. What would that lesson be?
It's a simple equation. It's the number of people that choose not to buy again from you this month or cancel over the number of people that refer new business.
Hmm.
And it's just you can't scale. Most people don't realize, like, let's take for example, a group coaching program that's got like, it's every month, right? A membership site. There's a certain point where your ability to fill the top of the funnel, there's only three kind of levers in those businesses. And then you hit what's called the growth ceiling. And this
Yeah.
is SaaS, right? Is your ability to add new people every month, the amount of people that cancel every month, and the amount of money you can charge per month. That's called ARPU,
Right.
average revenue per user. And for me, it's I've always gone to the referral side because the referral is just such a beautiful activity that's backed by so much other stuff that has to happen for you to get that. And if you literally build the business with the premise that for every one customer I get, I'm going to work my ass off to get at least 1.5 referrals, then you'll always be net positive in your growth engine. And if you don't, then you're always going to fight against the headwind or the tide or the stream,
Yeah.
because you're trying to fill that funnel to make up for the ones that you've lost. And it's a percentage game. So if you're at 20% churn on your group coaching program or your membership site, you can pretty much model out because I have a whole spreadsheet where you put in the data and it shows you the date that it's going to happen where you're going to flatline. And for a lot of businesses, it's not like for a membership site, they're at 300. Like they don't even realize that this is a $300,000 gross ceiling, or a group coaching business. This is a, 8 million, 10 million a year, which for some people they'd be like, yay, I'm ecstatic. For me, that I don't want gross ceiling. So that's the big thing, is that if you can't figure out how to have the number of people referred in your deal flow or whatever pipe drive, whatever you want to measure, based over the ones that cancel or don't repurchase, then you're always going to be stuck. And that's true for SaaS. That's true for gym memberships. That's true for coaching.
Dude, that's awesome. Two questions. How do you have any information on referral stuff that people can go and check out that you've talked about? Maybe even if you have this gamifying referrals.
I give away everything I know for free on my YouTube channel. So I literally have blessed to have the largest SaaS site. But as you've discovered, 80% of SaaS is transferable, right? And really 95. I mean, if you want to get nerdy on like, expansion revenue and pricing stuff, I think there's a lot that SaaS does well that other businesses could borrow. But Dan Martell or Dan V Martell is my channel, or just search Dan Martell on YouTube. Literally, if you search, I publish every Monday for 4 years, and I've made a commitment for 10. So I've got another 6 to go. I have the content, like I don't stop. And it's everything I talk about, buying back your time to building sales teams, to building marketing growth engines, et cetera. It's there. So you just search the Dan Martell plus the term you need. And if it's not there, leave a comment. I process every week, and that's what guides my editorial.
Awesome. You've got great content and goodies on your website, danmartell.com as well.
Yeah, that's the primary. The way I think about it is, if you want to potentially work together, just email me, dan@danmartell.com. If you want to be inspired, Instagram main feed. If you want to see behind the scenes, Instagram stories. If you want to laugh a little bit, TikTok, I'm on there. I just had a video go viral, and I wasn't dancing to Renegade, and I'm not a 13-year-old girl, so that's cool.
You've got good looks, though.
Well, that might have something to do with it, but I'm really proud of that viral video after 100 posting. And then my YouTube is where I teach everything I know. That's one of my rules in life. It's what does it mean to be a Martell? We teach everything we know, and that's where I do that.
Awesome. Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I just think if you're in the shit right now, because I think a lot of people are, and I know you hear it all the time, and I hope this comes across, is just you have to have blind faith. What I went through as a teenager, and working the 12 steps, they talk about this often, because there's no proof, there's nothing to believe in. There's just like this blind faith that if I follow this process, my life may look differently. And I'm telling you, if you wake up every day, because that's the only thing you can control. If you literally say, okay, I don't have proof in my life that any of this is going to work out, but I can decide tomorrow to wake up at a better time, to do a strict morning routine, to move my body, to get my health on, get my sweat on, and to put in and create some real work. And if I just do that consistently over time, just trust in the process, it'll come, your life will look, so you won't even be able to manifest this stuff, but it requires belief. It literally requires you to have belief when there's no proof of it. And that's all I can say. If you're listening to this and you resonate with my story, just know that my life is an example of that, of making decisions every day with a sense of belief that's unjustified for the reality I'm living in, knowing that the possibility is there for me to have.
Beautiful. Yeah, man, that's great. And people have to realize that they have the power to create whatever reality they want.
It's theirs. And they already got 100%. Everything they know, everything they need to know, everybody they need to know, they already got it. That's the coolest part.
I love it. Dan, thanks for your time. The Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I appreciate it, Chris. My pleasure.
Thanks, bro.
Cheers.